Hello folks, welcome to part 17 in this hybrid zombie shooter game. And today I have something exciting to show you. Today we're going to assign our weapons to specific slots in our loadout. When the player actually selects a weapon and chooses to equip, we're going to highlight the available slots for the player to equip the weapon onto. And when the player chooses their specific slot, we're going to assign the weapon to that slot. And also, if there is an existing weapon in that slot, we're also going to remove it and put it back into the player's inventory. If you like this type of content, please feel free to hit that subscribe button as I'm posting more and more, and also hit the like button to tell me that you do like this type of content, so it encourages me to create more and more videos just like this. Let's get into the video now. So first, I'm going to go to my content drawer and go to the UI folder and open up our weapon slot. Previously, when we created our weapon slot, we just added a size box. I'm going to add some additional items to this. So I'm going to right click on the size box and then wrap with a overlay. And inside of this size box, I'm also going to add in an image, just like that. And also let's add in a button. I'm going to add the button on the overlay. So it's on top of everything. Select the button and then I'm going to stretch it out. And this button, I'm just going to make it like an orangish or yellowish tone to it. And this button, I'm going to go ahead and name this as selection_btn. Compile and save it. I'm going to go to the graph, and here I'm going to create a custom event. Custom event would be disable selection button. And here I'm going to drag in my selection button and say set visibility and set this to hidden. And also drag in the selection button one more time, and I'm going to say is enabled and then set is enabled to false. Now I'm going to copy this entire function, paste it one more time. This will give me a custom event again. Let's rename this as enable selection button. And here we're going to go ahead and make it visible, and then enabled is going to be checked in. And in our event pre-construct, we're going to call in disable. So when the game starts and when we open the widget, the button's going to be disabled because we only want the button to activate when the player selects equip on a weapon. All right, so that's it for the first part here. And now we want to do our event construct as well. So let's drag this event construct all the way to the top, add in a new variable, and this would be our weapon info. Let's make this of type S weapon info. I'm going to make this instance editable and also expose on spawn. Compile and save it. And one more variable that I want to add is the slot number. Now in our game, the player is going to have two slots for the weapon, and they can equip any type of weapon into that slot. They can have two primary weapons, two sidearms, however they wish to play the game, they can do so. So I'm going to give it a slot number and also make this instance editable and also expose on spawn. And I'll show you how the slot number works in just a moment. First, I'm going to go back to the designer, select the image, and name this as weapon_img. And back in our graph, I'm going to drag in the weapon image and say set brush from texture. Connect this here just like so. And then drag in our weapon info and do get weapon info and break the weapon info so we can get our portrait and connect the portrait to the texture. I'm going to scroll down here on the pin options and then hide all the unconnected pins. Again, we're going to come and add more information to this weapon slot, but for now, we want to just have the weapon image show up. And now in my designer, I'm going to select this selection button, scroll down all the way, and where I have on clicked, I'm going to select on clicked. And we need to set up the on click so that when this button gets selected, we want to notify our player character of the slot number. And this would be either slot 0 or slot 1. We're going to have two slots, and then this is all that we're going to convey to our player character. So we can convey this to our player character using interfaces. So let's go back to our content drawer. Open up our interface. We have our equipment interface. Let's create a new interface function. We're going to name this as selected slot info. It's going to have an input, and this would be our slot number of type integer. And I'm going to also add in a widget reference. This will be the reference to the widget itself. So it'll be w_weapon slot. Yeah, there you go. I'm going to compile and save this. Back in our weapon slot, I'm going to right click and get our player character. Off of this player character, I'm going to search for selected slot info. Plug this in here just like so. And now plug in the slot information here. And for the widget reference, it will be a reference to self. So get a reference to self just like so, and then plug it in here. We're not going to use this reference, self-reference in this tutorial, but it would be useful in the future. So I'm going to send this information in now. Now let's go to our third person character and implement this interface function. So in our content drawer, I'm going to go to the third person folder, open up the third person character, and I'm going to go to the interfaces under BPI equipment. I'm going to go ahead and right click on the selected slot info and implement this event. Now we have two key pieces of information. We have the weapon that the player just right clicked on. This is the weapon itself. And then also the slot where the player wants to put this weapon into. So we need a function now to connect both of them together. And I don't want to create a function here on the main character to take care of that. I want to have an entire component set up for this to take care of this function. So let's go to our content drawer, go to the core folder, right click, and let's create a new folder. And this we're going to call it as loadouts. Inside of here, we're going to first create a structure. This would be s underscore loadout struct. Open this up, and we're going to have two variables in here. First one is the weapon info, and this would be of type sWeaponsInfo. And the second one is going to be slot quantity. And let's make this of type integer. Save and close. Now we can close that structure. And now we're going to right click and create a new blueprint class. And this would be of actor component type. So that'll be BPC underscore loadouts. Let's go ahead and save all. And in our third person, before we go into the component, in our third person, I'm going to add in this component, BPC underscore loadouts, just so that we have that readily available. I'm going to compile and save. Back in our content drawer, open up the BPC loadouts. And the first variable that I'm going to have is the loadout content. This would be of the type, the loadout struct that we just created. And let's make this of type array, so it can hold two weapons information. And off of event begin play, we're going to drag in this loadout content, and we're going to do a resize. And this resize, it's going to be set to 2. So this makes it so that the loadout can only hold 2 weapons at any given time. Save this. Now we need to add in a new function to take in the weapon. I'm going to create a new function and name this add to loadout. And this add to loadout is going to have 2 inputs. First one would be the weapon info itself, which would be of type sWeaponsInfo. And then the second one is going to be the index, and this will be of type integer. This is basically the weapon info and where the weapon should be placed. And this is the 2 information that we already have here. So let's go ahead and create the function. First, let's get our loadout struct. Let's do a get, and let's get a copy and connect this index into this get just like so. And here I'm going to drag off of this output of the get and then do a break. And I'm going to check to make sure that my slot quantity, if it is less than or equal to 0, that means the slot is empty. Then I want to do one of 2 things. So let's first connect this branch here to the main execution pin. Now, if the slot is empty, then I'm going to drag in my loadout content. I'm going to type in set array element. Connect this off of true. And the index here would be this index. So I can just drag off of this and say get index. Just like so. And the item, I need to drag off of this and I need to make sLoadout struct. And this is the weapons info. So I can just go ahead and say get weapon info. And I'll get the weapon info here. And the slot quantity, I'm going to make this into 1, indicating that this slot has something in it now. So let me just move this up just like so. And off of this, we want to do a return, pile, and save. And now, if the slot is already full, that means there's already an existing weapon in that slot that the player want to add it to, then we want to remove that item from the slot. So let's go ahead and create a new function. This would be remove weapon from slot. Now this remove weapon is going to have the weapon info, and this would be of type S weapon info. And also this is going to have the index where we need to remove it from, and the integer, just like that. The first thing that we're going to do here in the remove weapon is to get our loadout content. Normally I would go ahead and I'll say remove index and I'll remove this index, but in this case I do not want to remove that index. Removing the index will remove that entire slot completely, and we need to rebuild it again, and I believe that's too much usage of resources that we can avoid just by doing a set array element function and then setting this to like blank, right? Instead of setting up anything in this, I will just set the index to this index right here, just like so. And then the item, I'll just do drag off of it and make, and then I will not plug anything in here. So this will reset the slot quantity and then also have no weapon info inside of it. So I think this is so much better. And then off of this, I'm going to do a return node. And this return node is going to have the weapon info, so which I'm going to go ahead and plug it in here just like so. And this is the weapon that we need to remove. So I'm going to say removed weapon. That's how I'm going to name this. And then also we want the index to be returned. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in here, and then I'm going to call this as the empty index. Now that we have set this index to like none, that means that index becomes empty. The same exact index becomes empty. So we're going to pass that information through. And that's it for the remove weapon from slot, right? So go back to add to loadout, and then we're going to plug this remove weapon from slot to the false. Let's pull this down here. And the weapon info here is the weapon that is in this slot already. So I'm going to drag in this weapon info from the break and then plug it in here as such. And then the index would be our index up here. So I can just drag and plug it in here as well. Let me just add in a reroute, just like this. There we go. And now I have some information available. Now I have the empty index, and then I also have the removed weapon as well. So now I just need to add the weapon. I already have the function here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this whole thing and then just paste it down here and then connect this to set array element, just like so. And off of this, I do want another return, add a return node. And to this return node, I want to convey the removed weapon. So with the weapon that was removed. And then also I want to add in a new output. This would be weapon swap with a question mark, and this is a Boolean. When we remove the weapon and add in a new weapon, we went ahead and swapped the weapon. So I'm going to set this to true. And then up here, we did not swap the weapon. We just simply added a weapon to the slot. So I'm going to set this to false and leave it as it is. And the removed weapon can be set to empty. And this is it for your add weapon to loadout function. So now in our BP third person, I'm going to go ahead and drag in my loadouts. And here I'm going to say add to loadout function, and then plug this in here just like so. And the slot number would be connected to the index. And the weapon info is this weapon info that we have up here. So I'm going to just pull this back a little and then drag off of this weapon info, and I'm going to promote it to a variable. So now this is a variable that we can, instead of having to drag it all the way down, I'm just going to promote it to a variable just like so. And then I'm going to drag in this weapon info and plug it in here like so. And now that we have added the weapon, we need to do a couple things here first. We need to do some cleanup. So I'm going to add in a branch for this weapon swapped. Now here I'm going to ask the question, was the weapon swapped or not? If the weapon was swapped, then the first thing that we need to do is to remove the weapon that the player want to equip. This is the weapon from our backpack. So we already have the function for that, remove weapon from backpack. I'm just going to copy this and then paste it down here and then set it here just like so. And then let's add a branch and then connect it to this removed and then connect it here. Now that we have removed the weapon that the player want to equip, we need to now go ahead and grab the weapon that's already in their loadout and then add it back into their inventory or their backpack. Because we don't want to get rid of the weapon that just because the player wants to add it, equip a new weapon, we want to put that weapon back into their backpack. So let's go ahead and drag in our BPC backpack here. And here we're going to say add to backpack weapons. Connect this off of true. Drag this removed weapon and then plug it into weapon info, just like so. So now We have successfully removed the weapon that the player wants to equip, and also we have removed the weapon that was already in that slot and added it back into the player's inventory or backpack. Now, off of success, once we have done this, we're going to go ahead and refresh our backpack. So we already have the refresh backpack function here. So we're going to just copy and paste it, just like so, and save it. We no longer need this up here anymore. So down here, if the weapon was not swapped, we still want to remove the weapon that the player wants to equip from the backpack, and then do the condition here. And we're not going to add anything to our backpack. We're just going to go ahead and do a refresh. So copy the refresh function and then plug it in here. Let's make sure that we go ahead and save all, compile and save all. So that's for the function of adding and removing the weapon into the loadout. Let's go ahead and take care of it on our widget so we can actually see these happening. I'm going to go to my content drawer, open up the backpack here, and let's go to the graph. And in this graph, I'm going to go ahead and create a new graph because I want to handle all the loadout stuff in a separate graph. I'm going to add in a new graph, and this would be named as loadout graph. And here I'm going to add in a custom event, and I'm going to name this as event begin play underscore loadout. Compile it. And then back to initialize this graph, I'm going to go back into my event graph, and then off of construct, I'm going to drag off of this construct and search for a sequence. Add in the sequence node. Off of then 0, it's going to go to the clear and the rest of the function. Off of then 1, I'm going to call in the event begin play loadout. So this way, this graph over here gets initialized when the widget gets created. So when the widget gets created, what I want to do here is to now first create a new variable. This would be our loadout content variable. This would be of type s underscore loadout struct. Make this of type array. Make it instance editable and also expose on spawn. Compile and save it. And now what I want to do here is when the game starts, I want to drag in my weapon container. Let's go ahead and clear all children. This is always something that we do. We clear the children first before we build it. So this way it's always nice and fresh. Here, I'm going to drag in my loadout content and do a for each loop. Plug this in here as such. And I only have 2 weapon slots available for the player. So I'm going to manually set this up. This is more of a hard coding. This is what they call it, hard coding, I guess. But I want to manually set this. To do that, I'm going to drag off of this array index, and I'm going to go ahead and do a switch. Switch on integer. Select the switch and make sure that you hide the default pin, and then add in 2 pins. Connect this to the loop body. And the slot 0 of the loadout content, I want to go ahead and create a new widget. And this would be our weapon slot widget. Slot is going to be 0 here. And also I'm going to drag off of this array elements and then do a break loadout struct and connect these weapon info here just like so. And now I'm going to drag in the weapon container, and then I'm going to say add child to wrapbox. But before I add this child as a wrapbox, I want a direct reference to this weapon slot. So I'm going to drag this return value, and then I'm going to promote it to a variable. And I'm going to name this child1. And then connect this to the add child to wrapbox, and also the content would be the child1 here, just like that. And then now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing off of slot number 1 here. So connect this to slot 1 and set this to slot 1 as well. Again, I'm manually setting this, so we only have 2 slots available. Connect the weapon info, drag the return value promoted to a variable. We're going to name this child2. And then I'm going to just copy this add child and then paste it in here and connect here and connect to the content. Compile it and save. This will initialize the slots every single time the widget gets opened up. And one thing that we need to do is to define this loadout content. So back in our third person player, where we have our open and close backpack, where we create the widget, we should now have the loadout content here as an option. So we're going to drag in our BPC loadouts, and then we're going to say get loadout content and then plug it in here, just like so. And back in our backpack main, I'm going to create two new custom events. So let's go ahead and add in the first custom event. This would be disable selection buttons. And the second custom event is going to be enable selection buttons. Both of these functions are going to disable and enable the button on the actual weapon slot based on when we need them. So I'm going to get child 1 and then also get child 2. Child 1, child 2 is the weapon slot itself. So in our weapon slot, we have previously created the enable selection button and disable selection button. So we're just calling that from our backpack here. Off of disable selection button, I'm going to drag off of this child and then I'm going to say disable selection button. Just like so. And then copy and paste this one more time. And then set this for child 2 as well. And then again here, child 1, I'm going to say enable selection button. And I'm going to copy and paste this. And I'll set this for child 2 as well, just like so. So let's make sure just the target is set to W weapon slot on each and every single one of this function. Now in our third person, what I want to do is when the player right clicks on the equipped weapon, we want to now call in that enable selection button. So I'm going to get a reference to my backpack UI, and then I'm going to call in enable selection buttons. So this will enable those buttons. And once the player has selected the button or clicked on a button, we want to disable it. So I'm going to move this back a little. And then again, drag in my backpack UI reference. And then I'm going to disable the selection buttons. Plug this in here, just like so. And if you notice, we are refreshing the backpack UI when the weapons gets removed or added, we're refreshing it. We need to also refresh our loadout so the weapons images gets updated dynamically in real time. And we're going to take care of this using an interface function. So under BPI equipment, I'm going to go ahead and add in a new function. And this would be refresh loadouts. And this is going to take an input. And this would be our loadout content. And this would be of type S loadout struct. Make this a type array. Compile and save. In our backpack main, go to the interface, and then we're going to go to BPI equipment, and then you have refresh loadouts. I'm going to right click and implement this event. It's going to put it on the main event graph. I'm going to just cut it, Control X, and then I'm just going to paste it here. I'm going to drag in the loadout content and then plug it into this event refresh loadout. And then connect this loadout content here. And then the output of this, I'm going to connect it to clear children. So this is going to do an event refresh. So back in our third person, let's call in that. So off of our backpack UI, we can actually go ahead and call in our refresh loadouts. There we go. And I can do the same thing, copy this and then paste it up here. And then now do a refresh loadout here, just like so. And the last thing that I need to do is drag in my BPC loadouts and then get the loadout struct or loadout content and then plug it in here, like so. Copy, paste this here, and then plug it in here just like this. Now with this function done, let's go ahead and test it to see how this works. We're gonna go play. Grab a weapon. Let's grab 2 weapons and grab some additional items just to make sure everything is doing good. Now in my inventory, I have weapons and some food items. And then I also have these 2 slots that is white in color because we haven't really set up any image yet. So I'm going to right click on this weapon and I'm going to say equip. And immediately you can see how the slot highlights. So I'm going to select slot 1 and you should see the weapon just show up on slot 1. And now I have the AR4 here. If I right click on this AR and then if I equip, it's going to give me both of those slots. I'm going to go ahead and select the slot 1 again. It's going to equip the AR and then it's going to give me my pistol back. And now if I right click and do an equip, then I can actually equip it on my second slot. And then it's going to equip it to the second slot just like so. And if I close the inventory and then open it back up, it's still going to be equipped just like how I previously equipped. And the item has also been removed from our backpack. It's no longer in our backpack. It's now in our own loadout system. Alrighty, folks. I hope this tutorial was very helpful for you in setting up your weapon system as well. On the next video, we're going to take a look at how we can unequip this weapon and put it back into our backpack, which is going to be a very simple function. I'll show you how to do that in the next tutorial.